Welcome to the Gadget Inspectors. I am your co-host, Geoff Stevens, and I have with me my other co-host, Mr. David Feldman.
Hey, everybody.
We also have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Michael Fritz.
Hey, guys.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We're going to have a great show for you. Let's actually delve right into the news right quick. First off, we have a sperm sample device.
Explain.
Yeah, so someone unfortunately decided that we needed a way to have live video of our sperm. I guess this is the way that we're always going to go at some point. This was eventually going to happen.
What?
It's called,
Where did you get that from?
Because, there's always so many things that you can, break into as far as like smart devices. So I just kind of assume this is one of those things that was going to happen eventually.
You assume people were going to sit there and get live video of your little swimmers. And,
I'm just saying, it was bound to happen, and Yo is that device. So it's literally called Yo. It's a home sperm test kit, and it literally allows you to turn your phone's camera into a microscope that's able to zoom in on a semen sample and determine how many sperm exist and are moving.
I call bullshit on that.
It sounds like it's relatively simple. It's just a microscope that connects to your camera. Well, I don't really see a huge market for it.
Okay, but again, like the real question is, can I share this on Facebook?
I'm sure you could, David, and I'm sure
there's a way
Morgan
to
would
do
be
it.
so happy with you for doing that.
Shut up, Geoff.
As well as everyone else who's on your Facebook feed wondering why the fuck you're sharing something like this.
Like Geoff. It's Facebook, you have to share shit.
Not like that. I don't want to see that on my Facebook feed.
Yes, you do. I want to tag you in it too.
So it's $50. It includes supplies for 2 tests. It hasn't actually gone through FDA approval yet, but it's in the process of doing so. The guy who made it, John Amory, is a doctor at the University of Washington, and he says it is medically sound.
Wait, hold on. I'm more curious now. You said 2 tests, so I have to get refills?
Oh yeah. So I like to call this the Keurig effect.
Oh God.
You buy the initial base model, which comes with the samples just to get you locked in, and then you have to go out and purchase refills, which you can purchase for an obscenely high amount. And they lock you into their ecosystem.
How do you get the sample?
How do you get this? Well, okay.
It comes with the kit.
The
Not
sample,
your sample.
I'm just saying. No. Let me rephrase that before we get too far into this. Like, do you provide the sample by normal means, like medically, or do you stick something right up in?
Well, it says it's a sample supply test, so I imagine you masturbate, and that's the end of it.
Jeff. Children watching this show. You can't say masturbate.
I don't think anybody's watching this show.
Okay, yeah. God damn, Michael, savage tonight.
Right?
I ain't got time for David's shenanigans.
According to our producer Todd, in order for a test to actually be considered sterile, they actually have to have 3 clean tests in court. So basically, it's entirely possible that this isn't really going to be as medically sound as it sounds or appears to be. I don't know. Stuff like this, it seems like just people in general are becoming more and more concerned with, fertility, especially as you get older, and, just more things seem to happen that makes it a little bit more difficult to get, pregnant. So I like I said, I wasn't surprised that something like this came along. But it does, on a very small scale, remind me of Theranos. Is it Theranos, I believe? Do you guys know what that is?
Nope.
So Theranos is, they've built I think it's called the Watson. Todd's going to probably have to verify this for me. But basically it was a blood sample test, and it was supposed to be able to detect, diseases and things like that within the blood. Super accurate. But unfortunately, there wasn't very much, medical backing behind it. Unfortunately, it caused quite a lot of stink, to the point where it actually caused the company basically to go bankrupt because Walgreens pulled out of the contract. Basically, every single blood test that they did.
I like how you slipped in that.
Yeah. Basically, every single test that they did wasn't proven to be medically sound. So, unfortunately, the reason why I bring this up is that something like this, people rely on this technology to give them good results. But
but how? Like, I mean, it's obviously not like a fertility test.
I mean,
it's
as
just a
far as
video of your little.
It really is though. It really is though.
It shows you that they're there and they're swimming.
Right. But at the same time, you're not a medical practitioner.
Right.
You don't really know what it means. It just could. I mean, just because they're swimming around doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy or they're.
The higher concentration of moving sperm, the better a man's chances of fertilizing an egg.
Right, I understand that, but at the same time, do you not like how many is too many or how many is enough? That's the real question. Like, what do you compare this to?
Well, okay, the Yo actually records video of the live sperm while its algorithm processes how many are moving and spells out potentially the detailed reading of their sperm.
So it analyzes it for you.
Yeah,
it gives you a rough
that's
analysis.
A little different. To me, this was more like, hey, look, this is a camera of my junk cell stuff, and now I can show it to everybody.
We're all grown ups here.
Look at my sperm, guys.
There you go. I was about to say, we're grown. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do here?
I was trying to be cute, but it didn't work out. I was trying to come up with a good name.
My thought
for sperm,
is this going to be great for people that are having trouble getting pregnant as like a first step to.
But you know what you do? You don't spend $50 on a test. You go to a fertility doctor who specializes in this sort of shit. And give them money,
but how much does it cost to go see that doctor?
Well, I understand that, but you know what? You want to get pregnant, you got to pay the money. If you can't afford a fertility doctor, you can't afford a kid.
It's not even the cost. It's really just, I could tell you right now, it's the anxiety factor. Well, sorry, it took a little bit to spit that out.
There's also the time constraint. You can order this bitch on Amazon once it's available and get it to your house and knock it out in the evening instead of having to take a day off of work to go see a doctor.
And you can do your business at home where it's just more private and convenient for you. I mean,
I'm
just saying, going to a clinic.
Maybe I'm a little too old fashioned because I don't really need candles and special aromatic things to get in the mood.
I mean, cool, but some people. Thanks for. Wow, this is delved into an interesting place.
What we're saying is David's going to pick one of these up before the next Apple conference.
I'm going to share it on Facebook, guys.
I was going to say that, David, you're not allowed to start a romance podcast for Ranting Media, but
that's basically David and Apple.
Oh, Apple.
Smooth jazz.
I love you.
Starts.
Steve Jobs in my poor broken soul.
Moving on. Tesla is actually suing one of the former coworkers. Basically, this dude, who, if he actually did this, is really, really stupid. Sterling Anderson. He's a former program manager of its Autopilot team. And Autopilot, if you're not familiar, it's not quite the self-driving software that it's autonomous and all that, but it does allow the car to actually sense if you're in a lane, for instance, and it'll automatically control your car in that regard. It's basically there to help, basically a more advanced form of cruise control, as well as like a safety feature that kind of helps protect you while you're driving. But basically he left Tesla and he's accused of stealing a shit ton of data, preparatory information, by writing it to his hard drives, and then starting a new company called Aurora Innovation, which, fun fact, is going to be a self-driving car company.
Why would you do that? You got to know. I'm sorry, but you would have to know.
They're gonna
if you start a company that you that's like sitting there and somebody working for, I don't know, Walmart, and becoming like one of their not CEO, but let's say they're becoming their, one of the top board members, and they say, I'm going to start a retail company modeled after Walmart. I'm surprised he didn't hire a lawyer and have them fine comb his like signing papers and stuff like that to make sure that this wasn't somehow illegal.
But hey, it worked for Michael Scott.
Huh?
Yeah, it worked for Michael Scott.
It did.
Okay, I don't know who Michael Scott is.
Really?
Wow,
no,
you've not seen The Office?
Jesus Christ. That's like Steve Carell's most famous role. Shame on you.
Still.
He attempted to, man, if Kevin was here right now, he'd slap your ass.
He'd slap you so fucking
hard. He basically tried to recruit at least 12 Tesla engineers. Only 2 really agreed to be on board, but this is not going to end well for this company. I mean, basically, it looked like he altered timestamps on the hard drives, things like that. Todd actually made a very good point in our chat. This is very similar to the Bethesda, aka ZeniMax, who's actually suing Facebook, who's the owner of Oculus, because John Carmack, who used to work for id Software, which is under ZeniMax, apparently left id and stole a shit ton of VR, code that Oculus now has in their possession. Allegedly, they're still in court. We don't know for real what's going on there, but I don't know. In that regard, John Carmack has always been regarded as like this huge industry figure, and if he actually did that, for one, like, lost all respect for him. If he actually did
his career is over at that point.
I mean,
no one's gonna ever trust him. No one.
Well, it really sucks because the dude, like, if he actually did what he did, or is being accused of doing,
alleged to have done,
right? Even if he didn't allegedly do this, like, his reputation is screwed.
No, he allegedly did this. If he didn't,
even if he didn't, if he didn't allegedly he did, like, even if he didn't do this, is what I'm saying. He's still screwed. His entire no one's gonna hire him.
Well, but I mean, in that case, it's really just the company trying to protect their IP. I mean, if you think about it, you have an industry figure, a huge juggernaut, just leaves your company and he goes to work for another company, doing very similar work as to what you were already doing. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some suspicions, but
right, of course.
In this regard, like, it was kind of merited. Like, the dude obviously took hardware and,
right. I mean, it's obvious. There's a trail. There's a big ass trail.
Industry credibility, Todd says, is the phrase you were looking for, David.
Right.
So, I don't know. Very interesting that this happened. But basically, he was also in violation of his contract. He wasn't supposed to work anywhere else for 12 months. And then
right, which is why that's pretty standard for that kind of job.
Yeah.
The fact that he didn't do that makes you wonder, like, was he smart enough to hire a lawyer to look over his contract, and the lawyer said, "No, you stupid idiot, don't do this."
I mean, wouldn't you know that you signed a non-compete?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you would, and unfortunately, if you're not paying attention to what you're signing, that could really bite you in the ass.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel like this guy seems just very guilty. I don't want to like throw him under the bus or anything. I don't personally know the guy, but
I mean, just violating your non-compete clause, that screws you over right there.
Yeah, completely. That's very true.
Even if they don't get you for stealing the stuff, they've got you for the no compete, and you're basically sunk at that point.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
So moving on to our last bit of news, D-Wave, who's actually a manufacturer of quantum computers, is now shipping its new 15 million 10-foot tall quantum computer.
Ooh,
that's pretty cool. If you guys
over
don't know,
2,000 quantum bits of calculation.
I always love this turn of phrase because originally, Crisis was like the gold standard back in the day. And The Verge actually has it on their article that we've linked to. It says, "But can it run Crisis?"
Probably not.
Probably not.
Because that's all processing power. I don't think it's graphics.
Yeah. So basically, it's all for performing calculations.
But what if I took it and converted it into a graphics card for my current computer?
That could be cool.
That would run Crisis.
Yes, it would. So basically, this is where we get a little scientific here, and I'm going to try to pronounce this as best as possible. The 2000Q, which is the model that they're releasing, performs calculations through a controversial process known as quantum annealing, which renders a program as a topographical map. However, there's a ton of people that are claiming that it works no faster than regular computer to solve problems, and that D-Wave's results are skewed. But there's a lot of companies that are investing in this. There's a lot of people are saying that this is like the future of computers. So it'll be interesting to see, kind of how well this thing sells and if it actually does what it's supposed to do.
It depends on what you're using it for. I truly believe, because with mathematic-based security and things like that, the quantum computer is better as a security device and communication device, not necessarily as like a pure mathematically based, whatever you calculate that way. In that sense, a regular computer is about on par. If you're trying to do basic moving of server data and crap like that, you're completely and severely underutilizing a quantum computer. The whole point of quantum computer is to be able to come up with different forms of mathematics at the same time and not necessarily just going from point A to point B.
Right. Now, it is important. It is actually interesting to note the actual chip that this is running on. It's actually roughly the size of a thumbnail. Okay,
that's pretty large.
Of a thumbnail
for a chip, yeah.
Look at your thumbnail.
Yeah,
that's large. That's large to you for a computer chip.
Mm-hmm.
Have you not seen what an i7 processor looks like?
The actual core of the processor? It's smaller than that.
You don't build the Macs. The Macs build you.
Oh, shut up.
Well, okay. The reason why I'm pointing this out is they're saying that the massive 700-foot cube structure is actually cryogenic refrigerators and shielding to create the proper quantum computer experience. The chip itself is kept at a frigid 15 millikelvins, or for those who run in Fahrenheit, negative 459.6 degrees Fahrenheit, as a liquid helium cooling system.
That's gotta be expensive to run.
Could you imagine just throwing like a normal gaming rig in there? Just imagine how cold that thing would be.
I don't think our components would work in that. It would be too cold for the moving parts.
You have to do an extreme overclock in order for it to run properly. You are correct, Mike.
Okay. Well, sure. Way to burst my bubble, Michael.
I'm just saying.
I mean, he's not wrong, but at the same time, I mean, you'd have to do an extreme overclock in order for it to run at normal temperatures. I believe the optimal temperature at lowest is 40 degrees Celsius.
I don't know that you could get an i7 processor to run hot enough.
No, but you could get multiple.
not against a cryo, not at those temperatures. I doubt it.
All right. Well, let me just Why don't we put a server in this bitch and then just say anyways, the kind of some final notes on this. It will be actually available to rent through a subscription. So no, you don't have to drop $15 million. It's very similar to how you can actually purchase hardware from Amazon's cloud service. So that's kind of cool. But anyways, that's really it for the news. Thank you, Geoff, for doing the news.
You're welcome. Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm not Geoff.
So let's delve into our topics. Today is actually the iPad's 7th anniversary. Now, this is not the anniversary where you could actually purchase it. This is the anniversary of when it was actually announced on stage by Steve Jobs. And we thought we would take a little bit of time to talk about what we thought when it was first announced, and has it really gotten any better? So, where were we 7 years ago?
Okay, hold on. Before, contrary to popular belief, I actually didn't suggest this topic.
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
I want to point that out, guys.
This was Jeff's idea.
This is my idea for one, so I apologize.
Let's just put it out there. I'm not gonna even lie. I thought the name was stupid.
Right? So when they first... we had an idea that this was coming. It was kind of the most natural evolution. And there was a lot of names, tossed about for this device. There was, the Slate. The Slate was the biggest one.
Yeah, that's the one I was going for.
The Ice Lite sounded just really cool. And they had a Newton device before, so that
Right.
maybe they would have resurrected it for this, the iNewton or something like that. But when iPad came out, oh my god, the amount of tampon memes that just came out was ridiculous.
It was even before memes were memes. It was a proto meme of it.
But I can't tell you like how many images I saw of like Steve Jobs holding up a box of tampons.
Right?
And it just says iPad, the new tampon from Apple. And you're like, well, I mean, that's kind of a thing, but as it always is with Apple devices, their branding and marketing just steamrolls everything. So now every single tablet nowadays is referred to as an iPad. Doesn't matter if it's a Samsung, doesn't matter if it's a Surface, it's still an iPad in the general
keep in
mind.
Mind. That's the only spot that Apple's managed that. Nobody calls a laptop a MacBook.
Right.
Nobody calls.
No. But where MP3 players years ago?
They're all
when you had an MP3 player, it was always an iPod.
Yep.
But
you could have had a Rio device. You could have had
it was either an iPod
Zune
or an MP3 player, because iPods didn't use MP3s; they used MP4s.
No, iPods used MP3s.
They could, yes.
They were generally regarded. It's one of the most famous MP3 players.
Right. It was an MP3A.
No, M3A.
Yeah, that's it. It was M3A.
As well as AAC.
Right.
So,
but what I'm saying is, I've never heard anybody confuse the two. It was, oh, is that an iPod? And oh no, it's just an MP3 player.
Dude, I don't know what store you were working in, because I kid you not.
This wasn't even in a store. This was literally just kids that, because I was in high school and middle school when iPods were coming out.
Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Kids, sure. But in general, especially as of, like 2 years ago, every single time I was like, oh, I need an iPod. And where are the iPods? And you would take them over there like, no, the cheap ones. Where are the cheap ones? And you take them over to that really crappy $50 RCA
Zune.
MP3 player or something. Well, yeah, I mean, when Zunes actually still existed, But as of like a couple years, they haven't been out for, what, 3 or 4 years now?
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised iPods haven't died out, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think they're on their way out.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
But, in general, when this thing was first announced, I looked at it, and it's actually the only reason I really thought about this was because I use an app called Time Hop, and it brings up, status updates from years past. So it actually brought up what I initially thought of the iPad, and I said, oh, it looks cool, but it looks just like a giant iPhone.
It was a giant. No, I thought it was a giant iPhone Touch, not iPad Touch.
Well,
damn it,
and when it was first announced, it basically was, because there wasn't a whole lot of applications out that supported that kind of screen size for iOS. So it actually had it still has this, by the way, an emulation mode where it would run iPhone apps, kind of scaled up as best as it could. But it wasn't the true. And
actually, I even remember saying, this is the dumbest thing. Like, why do you need a giant iPod? And that's literally what I said when I first got one. I actually ended up getting one anyway. And you know what? I'll tell you what. It's a nifty little device, and I'm glad I got one after so many generations, obviously, now.
Yeah, well, I mean, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I still have my original iPad. The one I found. I didn't pay for it, but and of course it still has all its dings from one Jeffrey Stevens.
It was one-sided, and don't make me feel terrible, man. I think about that moment every time we talk about moving. I'm like, oh yeah, that one time.
That one time he dropped my iPad on the driveway. Yeah, that was great. But I mean, it's looking at it compared to Sarah's new iPad Pro. It's so big and bulky and
it's
heavy. It is. It's massive.
Well, and that's kind of how technology. I mean, even the very first iPhone looked like that.
Well, and that's fine. We're not saying that, but it's just amazing, like how in less than a year they cut it in half. That's what we're talking about.
They practically did. Yeah, it was pretty.
I mean, it was such a massive device, and it literally did look like a giant iPad Touch. in every sense of the word.
Yeah, I mean it
you remember
was...
the memes originally
Right.
Oh
about
my
them
God.
re-releasing the iPod Touch as the iPad Mini?
Yep. I mean, it was an interesting device. It felt like a natural evolution. Now I will say that it hasn't really been as successful as Apple had hoped. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about in general. Yes, obviously it does sell quite a bit of money for them, but it never really took off quite as well as their phones did. And
Right.
it's basically... The reason why is because a lot of people use their phones every single day. It's a very convenient device, whereas the iPad is kind of seen more of a luxury device, really, in my opinion.
And especially since it's early days, and since the fact that you can't use it as a phone, there's no real reason to have it replace your phone.
Right.
The only real plus side of having an iPad, especially during those first years, was everything was bigger, so it was easier to read, and you were able to scroll through websites and basically have a very expensive Facebook machine.
Also, the battery life on the original iPad was phenomenal.
Yes.
Like, I swear, I went weeks without charging it.
Yeah,
times.
you didn't.
Now, it wasn't a whole lot of
sometimes
usage.
you'd forget
but
you needed to.
yeah, you're like, oh, wait, it's dead? It does that? It dies?
Yeah, and I mean, looking kind of back at the specs originally, it had a 1024 by 768 screen, which, at that time, that was... I won't say hugely high resolution, but
it was pretty much the standard.
It was pretty much standard.
Right. Well, it created the standard, if you will.
256 DDR RAM. Wow.
It didn't need anything else than that, though.
A quarter of a gig of RAM. That's crazy. But even when it first launched, it wasn't very fast.
It didn't need to be, though. That's the thing. I would
say
basically what I did with it is I watched movies, was on Facebook, and used it as a music holder.
Well, even when I first had mine, it didn't run it didn't do any of that all that well.
No. And I mean, for a while, it took a bit for them to actually get a 3G version going.
Right.
AT&T was kind of announced that they were, doing it. It took a very, very long time for us to get, Verizon. But I mean, to be fair, it took a long time for us to get Verizon as well. But basically, yeah, when it was first announced, our producer actually mentioned that it didn't have Flash support.
Nope.
And it didn't have HTML5 support. HTML5 wasn't even really a thing at that time.
Right. And it didn't. And actually, it did have Flash support at first. No, I'm talking.
No,
I'm wrong. No, that was only on Android devices. I apologize.
Yeah, Steve.
It didn't have. Yeah, Steve Jobs never wanted Flash on the devices, and he stood fast on that. We'll never have Flash on our iPhones or iPads.
Yeah, he was very, very adamant. Again, he said, "Oh, it sucks. It just drains battery.
It drains battery and drains power. And it really does.
And let's be fair. Yeah, it really did, and it's a huge security risk now. So I mean, he wasn't. There's some things I don't agree with on Steve Jobs, and some things I do, and that's one of the things that he was right about.
Yeah, he was on the right side of that one.
Now, there was basically 300,000 iPads that were sold on the very first day of availability. And that was in April. Fast forward to May 3rd, 2010, which is same year, they had sold 1 million iPads.
That's crazy.
That's half the time it took for Apple to sell the same amount of original iPhones. So,
but at the same time, you also got to think about it in this terms. iPad was a lot cheaper than replacing or getting a whole new phone, and everybody else, especially in those days, were locked in a 2-year contract. So even the people who really, really wanted to get an iPhone, they couldn't because they had to wait out their contract and then pay and then switch over to AT&T if they weren't with AT&T in order to get an app.
Yeah, AT&T was the big detractor for the iPhone.
Right, and that was the problem with a lot of people is they didn't either want to go to AT&T or they couldn't afford to break the contract with their current people or even with AT&T and get these new phones.
Yeah. Now,
and by the time the iPad came out, people were used to iOS and the touch interface for the iPod Touch and the iPhone. They were, prevalent in the market, so people were familiar with it. It was a bigger one. It had better, you could see things better on it. So it was
right.
There was an instant demand for it because of the familiarity.
Now, the software shift was originally, iOS 3.2. Eventually, it took off in quite a way with iOS 5. And there's a reason why I say that. It included the notification center. It had iMessage, meaning that you could actually send messages back and forth for free to people on iOS devices. First iteration of iCloud was actually available with that as well. So and what's really important about that is that it was finally kind of stepping away from iTunes being the only way that you could actually maintain the iPad. So this actually had quite a long shelf life. It was basically discontinued in March 2011. The iPad 2 came out, and I think the iPad 2 is probably where it really got some steam. Hugely popular device.
Yeah, the iPad 2, I think the iPad 2 ended up being cheaper than the iPad 1 after a short period of time, right?
Yeah, well, and in the last, it was discontinued not that long ago.
Yeah.
It was discontinued in 2014, which is that's a really long time.
Right. The original iPad 2, when it first came out, was the exact same price as the iPad 1 when it first came out, which is why everyone, once they got an iPad, once the two devices were on sale, people were like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get an iPad 2. It's half the weight, half the size, better screen, better memory, better everything, and it's the same price. And that's what really helped start Apple's selling platform, where you get a better device for the same price you got it a year before. So because of that marketing technique, they sold just bukus of iPad 2s.
iPad 2 was the widely popular one.
Yeah,
right, and it became the platform for many, many years.
Now, our producer actually noted that the iPads have always started at a $499 base price, which has always been kind of their standard. Now, we've noticed, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, the 32 gig version is now $499 of the latest iPad, correct?
That sounds about right.
Have we made that? Has that actually?
Hold on.
32 gig doesn't exist, according to our producer. For the iPads, really.
16, 64. Yeah, I think they still do the 16. And I think it's because it's so freaking cheap at this point for them to make that they stick with the 16.
Huh. That's interesting.
Sounds about right.
32 gigs?
No, it's 64 now. They did add 32 at one point in time. That was a couple years ago. But then they since then jumped up to 64. Gig. Yeah, it's 16, 64, and I think 128. And now I think it's even like 256.
Uh-oh.
What?
Sorry, my internet was kind of acting up a little bit. I apologize. So that's kind of the iPad's legacy, though. It really is. It's a very interesting device. We had, who owns like the latest iPad? Because I actually have an iPad Air, just a standard Air device.
David, do you own a different one? I haven't updated my iPad in forever. I haven't really needed to.
Now, I know Michael's girlfriend has the Pro.
Yes.
How does she enjoy it, Michael?
What she's used of it, she's loved it.
And did she get a case for it finally?
Yes, she did.
Okay, that's good. So I don't know. Like I said, the iPad has really kind of gone down in terms of sales. Like I said, it hasn't really been as popular as Apple has, wanted it to be. But they keep, incrementally updating it. The Pro line, which has the stylus, the two different screen sizes, the 9.7.
The stylus is not included.
Hold on, guys. You can't call it a stylus. That's not what it is.
Oh, the pencil. Excuse me.
It's a stylus. Get over it.
But again, it really isn't, because the stylus indicates that it's, just a rubber piece at the end. It's more of like a smart enabled.
No, this is where I disagree with you.
The stylus on the Note is also called a stylus.
But it's really not a stylus.
It is, though. And the reason why I say that is
none
because
of these are
Wacom,
stylists because there's no T in stylus.
Right, Wacom has been using these pins for years for their tablet devices.
Who?
And they're Wacom. And they're called... Dude, hold on. Let me explain. All right? Have you heard of them before?
Wacom?
Yes.
Maybe?
Okay,
I feel like I have, actually.
They were the original tablet, if you were. There's no screen. It literally connects into the computer and allows artists and other designers to actually draw on the computer.
Oh, the drawing tablet. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And those are called stylus pens. So, therefore, it's a fucking stylus. Just get over it. Just because Daddy Steve Jobs said that styluses are awful does not mean that it is not a stylus.
But they're still awful.
But they came up with their own, so...
Yeah.
But it's not a stylus. It's an Apple Pencil.
Okay, Cartman. Anyways, so, I'm interested in seeing where Apple kind of takes this in the future as far as Apple is concerned. The Apple iPad, I apologize. There's not anything that's really mind-blowing, but this does kind of bookend into our next topic as far as usefulness is concerned. Mobile operating systems such as iOS and Android, can they replace a full desktop experience? Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Honestly, for a lot of computer users these days, it does. Now, anybody who's doing, proper gaming or
proper gaming.
I mean, anything above Angry Birds and Candy Crush. Yes, proper gaming. It completely replaces it. It's got, it's got Facebook and everything people are viewing online. You do have basic production apps as far as like Word, PowerPoint, Excel. You have equivalents for those. You can get a keyboard for it. You can even get a case that has the keyboard built in. Don't know why you wouldn't buy a Surface at that point, but it's there. Yeah,
so
it easily replaces it for anybody who's, if you're looking at a laptop instead of a computer, or instead of a full desktop, then you should absolutely be looking at a tablet as well. So, as an option.
So it's interesting that they bring up equivalence. This is kind of, and I'm going to try to steer away from this as much as possible because it took up an entire podcast the last time we did this. Where you can't really run full desktop apps on these mobile operating systems.
Right.
I basically, the best way that I can equate this is that, say you're running Linux. Okay, you love Linux. Linux is free. Linux is great, but it doesn't have your favorite Windows applications. Photoshop, for instance, does not natively run on Linux. Any of your video editing software that you've used for years that are industry standards doesn't run on Linux. So you turn to Wine, which is it is not an emulator. It is designed to actually run applications natively on Linux for Windows. The reason why I'm saying this is that there's a guy who wrote a very eloquent piece about Wine 2.0, which is coming out very, very soon. In fact, I think it's already out. He's basically saying, there's a certain time where I'm using Linux, I love Linux, and then I start get the itch. And the itch is I'll literally be wanting to play Overwatch, or I'll want to play some game, and I can't. And it irks me. It's just an itch that doesn't go away because there's no way that I can run that particular piece of software on my mobile computer, which is his Linux-based laptop. So I kind of equate that same thing. If you're running a mobile operating system like Android or iOS, until we get native applications running on there that we use every day as far as desktop's concerned, it's a very restricted system, unfortunately. Now,
But I'm sorry, Geoff, but you're also taking it from the point of view of a power user.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
We're not
No.
regular
I
everyday
understand.
users.
I understand that this isn't for everybody. But
For
what I'm
most
saying
people.
though is that some even consumers get the itch. When you look at Android and you're given the option, originally you couldn't get Microsoft Word on your mobile devices. Now
Yeah,
you
you had to
can.
use some sort of clone.
Right, you can. But people were getting the itch even then. Just normal consumers, they're like, fuck, man, I really want to do Excel on my mobile device, on my phone, for instance, while I'm, traveling from here to there. That's not a power user at that point. That's just a guy who just wants to get his work done. And I feel like you're kind of restricted even today.
But my point is that it depends on what your usage is. If you're not using things that are specific to needing a laptop or even a desktop, then it works just fine.
Right. Yeah, quite a lot of people just use it to check their email, look on Facebook, watch a movie, do some streaming. That's a pretty average day.
Because how many people use Excel when they get home from work?
I just don't consider business users or average consumer. Because if you're using it for business, you need to have a laptop. That's what they're for.
You're probably at work too.
Right.
Well, no. What if you're traveling? What if you don't want to lug around a keyboard and a really, a laptop, even if it's an Ultrabook? Like, what if you don't want to lug that around? And
that's
an
your
iPad is just more
choice. If you don't want to, so sad, too bad. If
Jeffrey,
you're in the world where you need to be able to utilize that technology, you gotta suck it up, Buttercup, and use your laptop.
See, and I think
you can't have both ways.
The problem.
You can't sit there and go,
"Why?
Oh, I really want to be able to do this, but I don't want to do this." That's like, that's ridiculous.
Why are we still stuck with that choice? Is my thing.
Because you can't make money.
Because you can't make money.
That's what it comes down to. It's all about money. Can you?
I don't
do
think
it?
that's
Probably.
the issue. I don't think that's the issue.
I do, because let's be honest. If you could make it a mobile device that was able to do just as much power as your it's not just about money, because you also got to think about battery restrictions. You got to think about memory restrictions. At this point, if I'm going to load up an iPad with as much power as a desktop computer, it's going to be big and bulky.
Now, see, I think that's where you're getting kind of confused, though. I'm not talking about loading it up with so much power that I can do this. We have the power of the cloud now. We can leverage that power.
But if you're a mobile user, then you have to use an astronomical amount of data.
Not necessarily.
For instance, astronomical amount of data for.
Well, I'm just saying, if you think about it, if you're pulling shit off the cloud and then you're uploading shit on the cloud, I would think
about downloading your entire porn collection, David. We're talking about downloading a Word document or an Excel document,
right?
Or maybe even images involved.
But I'm saying this is consistently.
I'm saying actually having a persistent connection open up to another computer.
That does not transfer. Remoting in?
No, yeah, essentially, but in a sense that even though you're remoting in, it's designed around a mobile device.
Mm-hmm.
So an interface that changes to meet that need.
Are you saying almost kind of like a streaming computer?
Kind of, in some regards.
What you're saying is just it's like having a device that is constantly connected to your computer. Your computer's doing the processing and everything, but the device is just showing what the computer is.
Like a really fancy monitor.
Yeah. That doesn't sound that bad, does it?
It doesn't sound bad, but it does not sound practical.
How?
Like, I could see the use for it, but in what situation do you need all of that computing power when you could just also, you're talking about input lag because of the connection. Say you're, halfway across the city because you're at work, accessing your computer at home, or vice versa, you're at home accessing your computer at work.
I think, honestly, I think what it comes down to is I think a lot of the times we're just stuck in our old ways. And the reason why I say that is because having a desktop computer or a laptop computer, it is kind of like we're or familiar with it, and we're going to continue using it for those quote unquote instances where we need to use a laptop or thing, even though we want to be able to utilize it in a mobile way. What I'm trying to say, in a sense, is what I'm bringing about as an example is your keyboard and mouse. Now, why are we still using a keyboard and mouse as our main input device? Why haven't we come up with some sort of way to utilize this touch interface that everyone seems to be so fancy and happy about? Why do we have a keyboard and mouse still when we can just use the touch interface? Because we're so used to using keyboard and mice that we don't want to utilize any other way, and it's almost unnatural to do it any other way.
The reason why I say that is for us, for those who have grew up on that technology, that's muscle memory right there. I can type almost 120 words per minute on a normal keyboard. You get me on a touch keyboard, God forbid. It's terrible.
Right.
There's smatterings of errors.
How are you on your phone keyboard?
On my phone keyboard, I can type fairly well, but I can't type 120 words per minute.
Right. Obviously.
And what we're trying to say is, in order to go to a fully mobile platform like that, you still need a keyboard and mouse in order to fully utilize its, your abilities.
I disagree on the mouse.
I mean, you could probably get away with
using a tablet with like a wireless keyboard that connects to it, or one that's in the case.
But then you're lugging around a whole lot of extra stuff, because I can't type on a mobile keyboard.
A lot of them are built
into the can on a full size.
A lot of them are built into the case, and no, you're not going to type as fast, but that's because you're used to a full size keyboard. But if you hadn't used full size keyboard in years and you've been using a truncated keyboard for a while, you would be used to it.
But then you switch over to a full size, and then you suck again.
The problem,
or is this how we become a part of Trump's America because he has small hands?
I think the problem is that we're forced to compromise. We're not at a time where we have the technology to make us, run everything that we want to run. I understand that there's power users and normal consumers, but I can't imagine that there's not. I mean, you guys, we've worked in retail before. There's a customer that's come in before and said, I would like to work on Excel documents on iPad.
You've been doing too much Microsoft training, Jeffrey.
I'm just saying.
No customer ever came in and asked for an Excel machine. You have the full
Office availability on all these things. Now, do you have the ability to create a full-on presentation with all these amazing animations and stuff like that without downloading a bunch of extra content that you have to do on a laptop or a desktop? No. But can you edit and can you create basic documents? Absolutely.
Basic, and that's my problem. You're restricted to a stripped down version of a program. It's the same thing with Photoshop Express. Yeah, you can do some basic adjustments, hue and saturation, contrast, brightness, all that other jazz. But if I want to apply a layer mask or do any of that really cool shit that Photoshop can do, I have to compromise by going back to my desktop. And
now, do you think is that memory issue, or is that going to be processing?
I'm sorry, you guys were talking over each other.
Go ahead, about that.
How long until that gap is closed, though? Because all of the programs on the mobile devices, the tablets, the phones, they're catching up to what's on the desktops faster than desktops can innovate and come up with new stuff.
Right, and the real question is it going to be a memory issue or is it a processing issue in order to have all that quote-unquote cool stuff?
Graphic. The reason I say is Photoshop, for instance.
For Photoshop would be a graphics issue.
Yeah. Photoshop
right, but what can you really do in Word that you can't do on the quote-unquote stripped-down version? Or Excel, or
I would say Word and Excel are almost there. PowerPoint's going to be further off because there's just a lot of options of what you can do with PowerPoint.
Right, and I think that comes down to a memory issue, not necessarily processing.
It works. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying
I think it comes to an interface issue. You can't be as precise with a touchscreen interface as you can with a mouse. You can't have drop-down
and then it
menus
comes down to
top.
Why are we still using keyboard and mice? Why can't we invent or create a good substitute? Because there have been plenty of devices that have had plenty of potential in order to replace these archaic input devices, but we still, for some damn reason, as a whole entire industry, keep using these damn things.
So wait, what are you saying is better than a mouse and keyboard?
I'm not saying anything is. I'm just saying there's a couple of devices that had potential initially. Now, because no one has ever decided to invest in these devices, they won't work anymore.
Well, it's also the mantra: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean,
because you're talking about a marginal gain in these situations without
Right.
gaining.
But again, you're saying marginal, but at the same time, I agree with you. It is a marginal gain, but at the same time, it's compromise. Why are we willing to compromise on accuracy, and then complain about the fact that we can't utilize it properly?
Why do you have so much beef against the mouse?
I don't have any beef against the mouse. I'm just
clearly
saying,
you do, though. You're very
no.
Look at it this way, David. Why would you redesign a fork?
A what?
Why would you redesign the fork?
A fork is archaic.
It does its job
David.
perfectly. There's
analog.
nothing.
Chopsticks
is older than a fork. Congratulations.
Chopsticks are actually older than a fork.
Right, and it works just fine. I mean, why did you get the fork?
Because the Europeans came along and were like, we fucking do better things than the Chinese, apparently.
No, because Europeans couldn't handle two things. They had to go down to one thing.
Actually, I think they were developed. I think the fork was developed independent of chopsticks. But
I'm pretty sure it was. But what I'm trying to say, though, is I'm not saying anything's wrong with the mouse. I'm simply stating that, we have such a reliance on keyboard and mice input devices that we haven't been able to innovate a new way to create an input.
Well, we do have a new way for input in place of a keyboard. It's called text to speech, or speech to text.
Right, and then we have a touch display, which isn't as accurate as a mouse. But what
I just want Minority Report. All right, that's what
I see. That's what I'm trying to get to, though. Why haven't we gotten to that point yet?
No, we have. I mean, there's projects out
there,
and
there's devices out there that will help, that have had a potential to replace the keyboard and mouse.
I'll tell you,
but we haven't really pushed it into it yet. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Remember how you were talking about cost?
Right.
That's your issue. So
it's mouse and keyboard and it's practicality.
Right. Mouse and keyboard, you can produce a dirt cheap mouse and keyboard that'll work on almost any computer that's USB powered. Versus this really cool technology that is just light years ahead of anything that we have in terms of cost. The normal consumer won't be able to purchase it, and therefore Microsoft and Apple just don't give a shit about it because they know that at some point, they can produce all the cool shit. Look at HoloLens, for instance. HoloLens is a great example. It's a really cool piece of technology, looks really great, but costs a shit ton of money. Right. They know that the normal consumer isn't going to buy it. That's why it's only out there for developers right now.
Right. And what I'm trying to say is that because of that mentality, we have shot ourselves in the foot and forced ourselves into this rut we're in right now.
Well, I mean, there's not really a way to escape that, though.
What I'm trying to say, though, is without Apple and Steve Jobs making the mouse as cheap as it was, it would have never been a thing. That's what I'm trying to get to here. And we're not investing the resources to replace these devices.
Steve Jobs?
Huh?
Steve Jobs made the mouse cheap and no.
He stole the technology from Xerox. Xerox created the mouse. Steve Jobs went over to Xerox, stole a bunch of different ideas from Xerox, and told his engineers, "Hey, make me a cheaper, more usable mouse." And that's what happened. That's how the mouse was created.
We've had this discussion before, and I've had to tell you you're wrong because it wasn't created by Xerox. Have you heard of Douglas Engelbart before? Apparently not, because you're giving me crickets right now. He's the dude that created the mouse. Okay? It was not made at Xerox. I don't know. What you're thinking of is the UI. The UI was stolen from Xerox because they were developing something really cool, and they saw all the animations. I read the Steve Jobs biography, which is where I'm assuming you're getting this from, David.
Mm-hmm.
They stole the UI.
Well, I know they did.
That's what you're thinking of. The mouse had nothing to do with Steve Jobs. Nothing.
Well, the thing is, though, so this guy named Gladwell, he's the one who worked at Xerox at the time when Steve Jobs visited the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, and he saw a demonstration of the 3-button computer mouse, but it cost $300. And so Steve Jobs went and took that same idea for the interface input device, and he said, improve it, make it a 2-button mouse, and make it $15 instead of $300. That's what I'm trying to say. You know,
I don't see any evidence of that. I don't see any evidence of
that.
I hate
himself.
I hate to like throw you under the bus here, but I don't see any evidence of that.
What do you want me to tell you? All these people are lying?
Which people?
The guy who worked at Xerox at the time, Steve Jobs, a bunch of biographies. I mean, it's all over the internet. What, you know?
I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but no. As far as I can tell, he had nothing to do with the mouse, like at all.
He made it to $15 and he helped create what it is now. I'm not going to say otherwise. I'm just saying that's how that worked.
So what you're saying is Steve Jobs gets the credit for it because he stole it.
No, I didn't say
made
he
one change
invented the mouse. I never once said that. I'm simply saying he helped create it to the point where it's such a usable device now. Without him saying, "Hey, I wanted to make this. I want to make this overly expensive input device into something that is more effective and cheap."
Shush. All right. Top posted a good article. It is claimed again and again that in the course of Macintosh's development, Apple just resorted to ideas the research laboratory Xerox PARC had hatched before. Fact or fiction? According to early reports, it was on this visit that Jobs discovered the mouse, Windows icon, and other technologies developed by PARC. These wonders have been locked away at a PARC by a staff that didn't understand the revolutionary potential of what they had created. Jobs, in contrast, was immediately converted to the religion of the graphical user interface and ordered them copied by Apple, starting down the track that would eventually yield the least and insanely great Macintosh. It's a good story. Unfortunately, it's also wrong in almost every way a story can be wrong. There are problems with chronology and testimony. The testimony of a number of key figures at Apple suggests that the visit was not the revelation early accounts made it out to be. But the story also carries deeper assumptions about Apple, Xerox PARC, computer science in the late 1970s, and even the nature of invention and innovation that deserve to be examined and challenged.
So
none of that happened.
Oh, well. What? My bad.
None of that
I'm sorry.
happens.
I always understood that to be like a real thing. So that sucks. Oh, but okay. So either way, did Apple make a cheaper mouse or not?
They went from a 3-button to a 1-button, if that helps you.
2-button, but
1-button.
No, it was originally a 3-button, wasn't it?
I think Xerox had a 3-button.
Please look.
Xerox had the 3-button,
right?
And Mac went to a 1-button because they felt that it was simpler.
I thought they had a 2-button at first, and then they decided to go to a 1-button.
I don't know.
Either way, they still helped create a cheaper mouse, and because it was so cheap, it was easily available for the masses. Either way, what I'm trying to get to is, you know, with the things like Google Glass and what were you mentioning, Geoff, with the other one that was similar to Google Glass? HoloLens. You know, those kind of interfaces, if we can get it as inexpensive as possible and have someone help create it in that aspect, then we wouldn't be stuck with the keyboard and mouse anymore. We might be able to do the whole Minority Report input. You know, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Oh, maybe.
I mean, that was a really long-ass way to get to that part of the conversation. But that's what I'm trying to say.
That's entirely true.
Yeah. So. Well, we've gotten a bit distracted from this topic.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, do you how do y'all feel about how technology is distracting these days? Is it too distracting?
Completely.
Yeah.
It is probably the major reason why this entire generation doesn't sleep.
The entire fucking reason we have this podcast.
Right?
So we can bitch and moan about technology. No, but for real, guys, like I hate to say it, but it really, I'm not that old. I'm 27.
Damn, you old.
You're older than I am, old man.
Shut up. That's not true. History does not say these facts.
Even back in the day when I was, a kid, I went out and played. I had fun out in the woods and stuff like that. But
wait, you saw sunlight?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
For up until I moved here to Texas and then became lethargic and lazy, so it explains so much.
Just too hot outside for you.
It's just too fucking hot outside.
And Texas makes you lethargic.
Can I just say,
and lazy.
when I first moved down
it's
here,
86 degrees.
When I first moved down here, I got out of the van and the heat hit me in my chest, and I gasped. I was like, it was awful. And that's why I fucking hate Texas. But anyways,
fuck off with your Texas hate.
Right? Fuck you, you Yankee.
Okay, native Texans, showing your pride.
You filthy Colts fan.
But back in the day, I don't even like sports. Why did you? Jesus.
It's because you're from Indiana. You'll always be a Colts fan.
Fucking Peyton Manning
until you embrace
the
Texans, you're a Colts fan.
Blasphemy.
I'm just saying, Colts fucking decimated Texans every single time Peyton Manning was around. So
glory days. How many years ago was this?
Denver and decimated the Colts. So what you got there?
I got nothing. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is when I was a kid, I read books, I played games. I had a Game Boy, of course, but you fast forward now to going into restaurants. Like the biggest thing, you literally can look around tables of kids just on tablets and iPads, and they're just glued to the fucking iPads. Thanks 7-year anniversary of iPad, by the way. It really makes me sad because that's all they do. And parents today are just really kind of lazy in that regard. They shove it in front of their kids and they get it, have them shut up, but they're so focused on it. And I don't want to preach to how to parent your kids, but there is just too much technology nowadays, and unfortunately, it's causing a lot of distractions for the general populace.
I mean, let's not even just talk about. Hold on, let's not even talk about just even technology in terms of phones and cell phones and iPads and whatnot. Let's even go with something as simple and basic as having a car with a radio and a speedometer, and having speed capture cameras and stuff like that. That is more distracting than actually having no speed limit, because you're sitting there, you're so worried about your speed, you're constantly looking at the the speedometer, you're looking up, making sure there's no speed cameras, and you're looking between these two, and you're not paying attention to what's going on, and you crash and kill yourself. That's what I'm saying. The technology is more distracting. The more information you have coming in, the more distracted, and you're trying to divide up your attention between all these things.
Would you have exaggerated that anymore?
I agree with you on that, but goddamn, you sound old. That's the distracting thing in a car: a radio and a speedometer, not the cell phone.
Those are the two most unassuming devices, which is why I'm pointing those out.
I mean,
obviously, a cell phone is incredibly distracting. Obviously, watching a movie while driving down this road is insanely distracting.
David.
What?
Question, David.
You do it.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't.
How often do you actually look at your speedometer? I know how fast I'm moving approximately based on the vibration of the car and, just the general sense of how fast I'm moving.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't really.
I know if I'm speeding or not without looking at
I'm
my
not debating
speedometer.
whether I know I'm not speeding or not. I'm just simply stating that if you ever move outside of Texas, if you drive in a lot of these other states, they have speed cameras. So you have to be more. Yeah. You have to be more. Aware of your speed than not.
But...
I would argue that the cell phones are probably the most distracting thing in the car now.
Easily, yes.
Everyone, and I don't care who says they don't. I don't care if you have a fucking sticker on the back of your car that says "Don't drive and text." You text while you're driving. Everyone does it. You shouldn't. I know I shouldn't, but I will literally be scrolling through my newsfeed while I'm in traffic because traffic is boring. It's boring and depressing. No one wants to be in traffic.
To be fair, I use my phone at stoplights.
Right. That's when I use it the most.
I
when
do
I'm
too.
not moving, I use it. If
I
I'm
do
driving,
too.
my eyes are on the road.
I do too, but let's be frank here. If you're in West Park Tollway in the middle of a goddamn traffic jam, you're probably going to be looking at your phone in order to get, away from the traffic jam.
If my foot is on the brake pedal and I'm not moving, then yeah, I'll be looking at my phone. However, if my foot is off of the brake pedal, or if I'm slowly rolling forward, I'm looking ahead of me, because traffic accidents are a bitch.
You know what? True. But in all fairness, you do drive for a living. That is part of your job.
Yeah.
The rest of us, we don't really have to have that ultimate responsibility of having a company car.
No, but wouldn't that actually amplify if I'm driving more than you guys, wouldn't that mean that I would more likely be bored with driving and looking for a distraction?
Yes and not, but yes, I would agree with you on that. You would be more inclined to do so. But at the same time, you have that awesome responsibility of not wanting to pay for the company car.
I don't pay for any of it. The company insures it.
Right, but at the same time, it doesn't look good when you go, yeah, I was sitting there reading on my phone and crashing into this dude.
Well, not only that, though, I feel like music also, modern music, let me rephrase that, is a bit distracting.
Classical?
No. What I'm talking about, the way you consume music, because before we were, forced to listen to the radio, and we couldn't change anything that happened on the radio. But now we have streaming services to where we can change the song at any minute. And I don't know about you, but for some reason, I have over 15,000 songs on my iPod. And I literally just constantly flip through the next song. Just because I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to that right now. No, I don't want to listen to that right now.
Honestly, I can't attest to that because I listen to talk radio all day.
God, damn, Michael, you're boring as fuck as a driver.
What the fuck?
Honestly, sports talk radio is a hell of a lot more engaging than listening to music.
I hate to say it.
It keeps me thinking.
Dude, you sound older than I do.
You really do.
Dead serious. It keeps me thinking more than listening to music does. Listening to music, you sing along and you don't pay attention.
I listen to NPR sometimes, but I'll be honest, it's got to be music on the way home. NPR.
I'll listen to a podcast if I'm feeling all talky. But that's about the most I'll do.
Well, I mean, it's basically the same thing. If you're listening to a podcast, I'm listening to sports radio.
Sports talks radio. That's just boring as fuck.
What's boring about it?
They moved the ball over this way, and this team won. And
no, don't get me wrong. I love sports, but I want to watch it. I don't want to hear some old dude yammer on about it.
Okay, but how many games?
Of what we're doing,
but how many games that you would want to know about do you go back and watch?
What do you mean? The score is the score. I don't give a shit about the rest of it at all.
Okay, so you don't care about the storylines. You don't care that LeBron James broke his foot or something.
Who? I don't care about basketball.
Okay, so Gronk hurts his back and he's out for the season. You don't care to know about something like that?
Yeah, it's called a news feed.
Okay, that's effectively what sports talk radio is.
It doesn't really matter. What it comes down to
this is not sports talk, guys. All right, we're not doing sports.
No,
but we're talking about different technologies. He's talking about podcasts first, a talk radio show.
I just don't like talking about sports.
And I like how he's hating on a talk radio show while he's recording a podcast, which is effectively a talk radio show.
I just talked about the irony of that.
If you, all right, dear audience, if you want to consume our podcasts while you're driving, that's all you listen to, that's fine. We appreciate it.
Love you guys.
Just talk radio.
What we're saying is talk radio is boring.
24/7.
And you should listen to our podcast.
Just not.
Because talk radio, they're talking about, well, you see, LeBron James shot for a 32-point average this game.
Are you trying to be Sean Connery right now?
No, I'm just talking in the most boring voice I can think of.
Yes, we must talk about sports.
Michael's like, I hate you fucking guys.
Huh? No, I'm just surprised at how off base you are. It's funny.
But
how
that's
off base I am, or how off base David is?
No, how off base David is.
Okay.
About what?
About sports talks. It's like you will talk about sports with somebody, but then you will say that sports talk radio is stupid when
because
it's literally
more fun
just
to talk
people
about it in person than it is to listen to somebody else yammer on about it.
Okay,
oh shit!
but
I'm talking about our podcast again.
yeah, how about that? Congratulations.
All right, you know what? On that note, I think it's a good time for us to end. I'll be honest, because we could keep going and going and going.
Well, yeah, because David never gets a point.
That's very true.
That's the whole entertainment part.
Thank you guys so much, Michael. Thank you guys so much for listening
and putting up with us.
And yes, for putting up for us, especially as we go off into so many different tangents that it surprises even us. If you're not already a subscriber, you can find us on our website at rantommedia.com. All you have to do is hover over the Listen Now button, and you'll be able to find us under the Gadget Inspectors. You can also find other fine podcasts such as Press Start Gaming and our new movie podcast / television podcast, The Real Reporters. I have been your co-host, Mr. Geoff Stevens. Tonight I've had with me my other co-host, Mr. David Feldman.
Bye, everyone.
And special guests, Mr. Michael Fritz.
Good night.
Just the singular guest, just Michael, no one else.
Oh wait, there's me too.
Good night.
Michael's split personality.
Just like that creepy M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Oh God.
Anywho, good night.
James McAvoy. All right, good night.